Yeah, it's universal. Humans we don't create, we don't invent these things. We discover them through the organic, natural mindset of paganism and animism before religion just came and completely destroyed true spirituality. That is what it's all about, is observing nature, extrapolating the patterns and saying, what is the wisdom here? What can we learn from this in a way that's useful and elevating? That's why I say I'm a syncretist, because it's the same thing. It's like the truth is discoverable. It doesn't matter what area, what culture you were born into, what year it is. It's timeless. It's everywhere at all times.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Uzlaga Saga. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Logan Hart with YouTube's The Wizard Factory. Logan, it's a pleasure having you on board with us today.
Everyone, it's a real honor to be here, and I'm super excited to get into some good topics.
Perfect. Well, as a fan of your channel and your content, I felt it's kind of footing to discuss, say, the polarities, masculine, feminine energies, kind of touching on the topics of things like building versus nesting, beauty and strength, hunting and agricultural, possibly pretty much your ideas or your input when it comes to things along that nature, or even into the topic of, say, harvest and warrior gods and spirits and throughout the Germanic and Norse sources.
Certainly, it's a great topic.
I figure that gives us plenty of things to go off of to let people understand, like, how you perceive things, how that helps you to kind of with your personal craft. Honestly, I don't want to do too much of the talking from the start. If we could, I guess, say, have you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here.
Sure. Well, I do the label thing. I don't have an aversion to labels as some people seem to. I recognize that they have their limitations and they can be misleading or limiting in some ways, but that's if they're misused. But essentially, they're useful communication tools so that I can say some words and make your brain fire in a certain way and go, oh, okay, well, now I have some idea about who this guy is. So some of the labels that I identify with is anarchist or abolitionist, anti-slavery of all forms, political or otherwise, Norse pagan, syncretist, animist, occultist or de-occultist, a revealer of this hidden knowledge for the empowerment of all, spiritual student first and teacher second. And I just love to share wisdom and empowering knowledge about ourselves and the world that we live in. So that's really what the Wizard Factory is all about, is just my outlet for expressing those many things. I'm definitely not a super niched down guy where I just talk about runes or paganism or whatever. It's a pretty multifaceted channel, but again, with the keyword being syncretism, I think they all really fit together. They're vital pieces of a bigger sort of blueprint, if you will.
Definitely. Beautifully said. I like how you really bring it all together. So if anybody's unfamiliar with his work, definitely click the link below or visit his channel on your own. Understand about all these different things and the syncretism that goes along with, or the branching between. So yeah, always great content.
How is it that you like to, I mean, like you said, that you do so many different things, and it's like, I struggle with that too, even within just the Norse stuff, picking a subject to speak about, but you do such a good job of keeping it broad and taking all kinds of different lessons and subjects like that. But how is it that you decide on what to make your videos about, or the content? How is it did you like start in one kind of tree trunk and then branch out on things like that? Or how is it you decide like what you're gonna speak about really, and how you tie it all together?
Yeah, I suppose I did sort of start with a main topic in mind, which I guess is still the primary focus of the channel, which is natural law. It is the governing dynamics built into the universe. That's what the word natural actually means, is not man-made. It is inherent to the reality field. And they are the governing dynamics, specifically of human or like intelligent behavior. So moral law, essentially. It is the most important thing that everything else stems off of, because essentially, if you're looking at things from the spiritual perspective, we come here with a specific purpose. There's our individual purposes that are all different, but there's a universal purpose that we all have, which is to have the spiritual experience, to express our soul and go towards our soul desire, our orlog, if you will, our dharma, and give our gifts back to the world in a way that serves and expands consciousness and prosperity and harmony on the planet among humans and all life. And so morality, objective morality, I know that's a big scary word people don't like to accept. They think it's all just subjective and for each person to decide. I do think that there are certain personal aspects to morality, but there are these universal cosmic principles that are everything to do with consent and the respect or the destruction of freedom. And so, taking it back to what I said first, we're here with a purpose. And if other people are kind of limiting our freedom and getting in our way, then that is keeping us from being able to fully express what we are here to do. And so that kind of has to be the first things first, to allow the space for us to all express and behave and interact with each other and the world in any way that we desire, as long as it's not causing harm or limiting the freedom of another.
But that was my next question too. As soon as I don't know if Drif told you about it already, but that's the name of our podcast. That's exactly what Uzlaga means, natural law. But in the
Beautiful.
older Norse, the Proto-Germanic word for it, and that was what I was going to ask you when you first came onto that. Was it through the Vedic? Was it through Dharma that you came to that word and concept first, or did you find that from somewhere else?
To be perfectly honest, I'd never really heard of it until I came across a teacher named Mark Passio, he was involved in the dark occult for many years, came out of that, and then began teaching in a way that I think is just very accessible. It's deep occult topics, but he makes them simple and just much easier to be kind of distilled and understood by the average person, for that very purpose of recognizing that, whether you like it or not, humanity does exist in a condition of slavery right now, especially under government. Government is slavery de facto, and that's a problem. That is objectively wrong. It's immoral, and it needs to change, not just from a moral perspective, but it's severely limiting the evolution of our species, and it, affects other beings as well. But just from the human side, like, we have to first understand the problem, recognize it, and call it what it is. Government's just a euphemism for slavery. So we have to see it objectively for what it is, understand that it's wrong, and then come up with better ways to organize society in a voluntary way that respects the rights of everyone.
Perfect. So yes, sounds good. Yeah, no
I don't know if I answered the question completely, but
good. Yeah, I'm seeing everybody's heads turning. That's I think we can speak about a ton of things later on, but I'll give it back
yeah.
to Dreve because I know you guys wanted to focus on specific subjects, so you guys can go ahead and any themes you want to focus on today is good. Go for it.
Sure, no problem. Honestly, it's great to have that, kind of an opening of self and beliefs and ideas. And I think it's great when you talk about the consensual aspect of it, whether it's government or the topics we're going to be delving into in just a second here. That consensual part is great, whether it's amongst, beings like ourselves, or even consent with the environment. If I choose to do offering, give sacrifice, and these sort of things, the consent, may I take this thing? Also, what am I giving back? Because I know all of us, this channel at least, primarily leads towards the Norse and Germanic sources and whatnot. So a lot of people don't have that idea when it comes to the consent. Like, yes, I would like to take this with me, but at the same time, do I have the consent? And I don't want to get too hippy dippy into it, but at the same time, yeah, to ask the spirits, the rivers, the trees, the rocks, the sky, these things, Is it okay to offer and honor this way that I so feel? And that's a great thing when it comes to paganism, heathenism, animism. Well, you don't have a necessarily set of guidelines that says you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z in order to get, overall choice. So I think it's beautiful how you bring consent into the picture, as well as, like I said, even in the governing thing. I have no problem helping my fellow man, but to be forced into helping those that won't help self, it's another topic. And I'm sure we can get onto that another day in another episode if we need to go that route. But
More than happy to come back on and
absolutely.
talk about other things.
Absolutely. I figured you'd be a great fit with your mindset and that of this channel. It'd be wise to have you on board, and we can help each other out here. The reciprocity of
Yes, like the law of Gabo.
Yeah. Together.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
root, for anyone unfamiliar.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll just jump right into it to make things easy enough, and anybody can chime in whatever they'd like, whenever they'd like, whether it's hitting on topic, changing topic, and whatnot. But as I said, once again, the topics that I was trying to get into when it comes to the polarities between the masculine and feminine would be more along the lines of building and nesting to start. I know personally, I'm a man and I like to create with my hands, although, it has that sense of satisfaction when we create something. There's something inert within ourselves that says, I did this, look at this, present that to others, whether it's even something as simple as this channel or a high-rise building. By doing something physical, whether it's in spirituality or in physical form, like we get a sense of enjoyment from that. And there's a part of us that is kind of missing on that other stuff. We can create as much as we like physically to an extent, while the feminine aspect of things, the other side of said coin, will say, has a way of creating much more, whether it's in man ourselves, raising us up to a level of creating more for ourselves or a better aspect, or even creating that next generation of the selves to come.
Yeah, that what you're kind of saying there for the last little bit there, Drif, would be known in occult terms as the generative principle.
But I mean, it doesn't stop there. I just kind of fizzled out on that to see if I can pique anyone else's interest. If anybody would like to speak on how they feel about the building versus nesting idea.
Personally, I would like to kind of set the stage for the broader topic of polarity, because it's a beautiful segue into what I was just talking about. It is part of natural law. There is a structure and an order, and I believe an intelligent design to the universe, and it's beautiful, and it's so rich and empowering when we embrace that and lean into that instead of fighting against it like so many people are. So when I talk about natural law from a moral perspective, it's a lot more like the cause and effect aspect. First of all, there are many natural laws, like the law of reciprocity, the law of manifestation, the law of attraction. There's countless laws. Any piece of wisdom that's got truth to it is so because of law, of just how things work, how things operate. But there are these 7 principles known as the Hermetic principles you can read about in the Kabbalion, and they're, mentalism, polarity, gender. There you go. Yes. And so, first of all, I love this topic because it's combining many of these together. So to even get to gender, you first have to have a polarity, a kind of a binary aspect to, because mentalism is the first one. That's just the all. It's called the all, which is the mind of God, or the, source intelligence of the universe. And then I like how each progressive law kind of builds on each other, and it advances, and it kind of is spelling out the operating system of the universe. So you have this polarity, this splitting, where it's the same thing but varying to degrees, as the law says. And then the gender principle adds in this masculine and feminine element where they appear as opposites, but as we know through the very creation of life, I mean, how poetic and beautiful is that when these two forces join together, they're not opposite, they're not fighting, they just become one in the most perfect, like a lock and key. They were made for each other. And then that's the greatest, probably the greatest source of power, in my opinion, as human beings that are born either man or female for 99.9% of every person that's been born. Yes, let's not split hairs and look at the extreme outliers. Pretty much across the board, there's man and woman. And this is a topic that I would like to dive more into on my channel that I haven't really talked much about. So I'm excited to kind of throw this out there and get you guys' thoughts on this. And girl, is the idea that there's a difference between masculine and feminine magic. Because oftentimes magic is spoken of in this very one size fits all. This is just how it works. But, a man in his masculine energy is going to have a different kind of power than a female, and each can do the other one, but it's not their strong point. And they're so much more powerful when they embrace that biological cohesion in their instincts, in their body, their somatic intelligence. So that's just one idea that I'd love to throw into the mix here, because I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, could you give some examples? I mean, some are obvious, some are pretty obvious like that, but I'm trying to, some examples I'd like to hear. Because I'm trying to get my brain thinking now what I would classify different magic groups of it
Yeah.
and orcs and why that is. But could you give some examples of those?
Well, sure, right off the top of my head, Sather and Galder would be sort of those two. That's the obvious one to me. But even just like in the world of self-help and, personal empowerment and entrepreneurship and all this kind of stuff, there's this sort of friction between the hustle and grind, sort of approach. Go out there and you just, work the long hours and you force things to happen. That's the masculine there. And then the more law of attraction, kind of new agey, a little, and like I think both sides are kind of missing that balance. I think they do tend to sort of get into that dysfunctional area. You need a little bit of the other to offset. When you look at the yin yang, there is the little speck of the other in each that keeps things grounded and, operating the way they need to. But essentially, that's a big one right there. Is like I think men tend to thrive a lot more in that. I'm gonna, I have my plan, ABC. I make a list, I crush it. Fuck yeah, just like make it happen. You know what I mean? And it's very very action oriented, and it's very penetrative because that's the masculine. It's like it's like a lightning bolt that's just like boom, explosion, fire, make it happen. And then the feminine form of energy or feminine form of magic is magnetic. It doesn't penetrate, it attracts, it invites, it calls in, and it's more about being your state of being and what you are than what you're doing and a state of doing in that action oriented thing. Again, both are extremely powerful and anybody can make either one work, but I just think it's much more natural and just instinctual for men to, be in their masculine, women to be in their feminine. And I think the ultimate force is when there's a team of both, when they're working together towards a common goal and they're both using their own special form of innate magic to create the same outcome. That's like next level right there.
Right. That.
Well, I was actually asked this question on my live Q&A that I did a little while ago on a couple Sundays ago. And it had to do with the feminine and masculine principle, specifically within the Nordic tradition and the Germanic tradition and that kind of thing with it. And if you look at it, it's not just during the Viking Age, but especially during the Viking Age, it goes back even further than this. The women were hidden away typically inside of the more protected area of the village and that kind of stuff, especially due to how dangerous the world was. The men were on the perimeter and they would be the ones that would go out and do things. I'm not saying women couldn't do this. We know that there are women that went and on the Viking ships and whatnot, the dragon ships and that kind of stuff that they had, the longboats. But it was typically men who were doing the trading and leaving and then doing all the other stuff with it, where the women and the children were more hidden away and protected from stuff with it. And this plays in the same idea for what's going on there within the myths itself, which is where the feminine principles are always more hidden, they're more elusive inside of that. You can see this with like the Norns or the Fugias or, the Valkyries and that kind of stuff that are inside of the myths and traditions. Whereas the masculine principles, the masculine characters and whatnot, they're much more straightforward. They're much more active. They're much more doing these other things that are going on with it because it fit the exact same thing that you would see organically within the society that was going on there. And to talk about what you were also bringing up in terms of like how you can go either or with it, just to give this perspective on it, some of the men who were practicing cider, they were said to have magical wombs that were going on with them on that particular part as well. So they were able to make it so that way they were entering the more feminine aspect of that when they were doing that part of it as well. And so just since this is a mainly targeted towards, at least for our general audience, towards that, I just thought I would throw that out there so they could start seeing some of these ideas within the Nordic tradition for themselves and start seeing how it can be applied to other things with it. And this particular notion is found in all different types of things. The yin yang is not just inside of, say, even in the Eastern traditions. Right here, I have a book that has to do with the Mayan calendar and whatnot. And if I can find their yin yang symbol for what it is they have, it's pretty interesting. But the point is that they have it too. Every culture has their variant of it. That's the Mayan version of it. So
That's cool.
the masculine, feminine energies being put into it. You see that with the notion of the Judaism and whatnot. They take the oldest known symbols that have to do with masculine, feminine principles and whatnot. The blade, the chalice, and they put them together inside of the Star of David as we know it today and that kind of thing with it. So it's in every culture is the point, and they all have their own variants of it for how it plays out with that. And in that case, you were talking about how they're bringing it and melding it together. So it's the same concept for making sure that that happens with that perfectly balanced.
Yeah, it's universal.
Again, that natural law.
Humans don't create, we don't invent these things. We discover them through the organic, natural mindset of paganism and animism before religion just came and completely destroyed true spirituality. That is what it's all about, is observing nature, extrapolating the patterns and saying, what is the wisdom here? What can we learn from this in a way that's useful and elevating? That's why I say I'm a syncretist, because it's the same thing. It's like the truth is discoverable. It doesn't matter what area, what culture you were born into, what year it is. It's timeless. It's everywhere at all times.
Yeah, it really is. I'm so glad that you've brought this up and you're speaking this way, because this is something I'm always talking about, always pushing and stuff like that. And because people don't understand, there is a strength and a beauty to the masculine and the feminine. If you're trying to distort them so much, there's no union in the middle. Everything, a lot of my shamanic practices, my main shamanic practice is Peruvian, from the Quechua, from the Pacos in the Cusco Mountains, so the mountains outside of Cusco, and everything with them is animistic. Their word for it is animu, which means spirit, and everything is masculine, feminine, how it blends in between. Even the same thing with certain types of magic and their practices and stuff. Some are practiced only by men, some are practiced only by female, and they follow that same principle to where it's, they're a farming culture, animal herding culture and stuff like that. They bring their alpacas and all that stuff literally across through the mountains, through the fields and everything. And it's always cultivating the land, creating the stage for the women to do the trance and all that kind of stuff. The men still makes the masculine creates the protection, creates the environment, creates that sacred space. So the feminine can come in and be chaotic and be everywhere, because in chaos comes creativity. So that's where all that flame is, and it's creating that protective space. And it's just so cool. And we're seeing that now in cultures and Pacos are only recently coming out to really speak about all of their stuff, because my original shamanic training comes through the line of Alberto Vellotto, the Four Winds Society. So you have Alberto, you have his student, Shaman Silverwolf, who then trained me. The Pacos have reached out to everybody through their lineage, and they're like, come learn directly from us. So they have like this cell phone in the middle of Cusco, like, where you get bad service on Zoom and everything, but I've been training with them every week. And it's just absolutely mind blowing to get it from the source itself, because it's so much more simplistic than people think. And there's that strength in modern society now wants to blend us so much together. They're not playing on the masculine and feminine strengths anymore to make them unified. They're just meddling it all up. So again, kudos to you for that. Like, I need to shout that from the rooftops. People are not getting that.
I mean, yeah, I feel we're in an actual crisis at this point. Like it's not just, I think this way is better. It's like, no, if we don't correct from the way that certain people, not everyone, but certain people are going, it's going to be catastrophic, because that is always the consequence of going against natural law. It's just how it is.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It is. It's yeah, I can go on forever about that. But yeah, I'm not easily offended or anything of that sort. Either you're gonna say guys or masculine. There's a strength in each one of us. I don't care. So don't worry about me.
Yeah. Yeah, the difference is beautiful, and it's important. Yeah, and people seem so threatened by, like even this idea of power and strength being a masculine quality, and women are like, but we can be powerful and strong too, and it's like, well, yes, but in a different way. You know, it's not all about just might and brawn and, hardness. That is a form of strength and power, but, it's a dominant type of energy. And the feminine is much more powerful when she's actually being more passive and even submissive, but not submissive to abuse or disrespect or any of those things, but just submissive to what is and the flow of things, right? It's a lot more like, don't fight against the tide, just flow with it, and then, steer it as you go, and that kind of thing. Just as an example.
Yeah,
I also kept getting this mental image of the egg, because the egg is the ultimate symbol of creation, and the egg has a shell around it, because you keep talking about, both of you kept talking about the village and how the men were surrounding the perimeter and the women were protected inside. It's just like the egg. The egg needs that hard shell to act as a container, because that's what the masculine does, is like a container for the feminine to flow safely and not have to worry about the inside world or the logistics of things and the survival aspect of things. She can just stay in that almost childlike openness and freedom and expression and creativity. Those are all those feminine aspects that need that masculine container and that safety and protection to actually be allowed to come out. And I do want to empathize with all the ladies that struggle with that, because there is, men are failing in a lot of ways when it comes to this, of being of service and for the betterment of her and himself, instead of just selfishly, for example, and that provision, that protection, that, all of those masculine gifts are not weapons to manipulate and control, but to serve and to create that space for the feminine to actually be able to come alive and be fully there and expressing.
I think men are just doing what we've always done when it comes to that, which is just trying to create that container for the feminine energy that needs to be done with it. So in our modern era, where we are told that, we're basically the same, there is no difference between us, we can do whatever we want, it's like, deal with it. And women want to go and behave more like men. I'm not saying all women, I'm just talking about some of the general trends that are going on with it. And what are men doing? Okay, fine, great. That's what you want to do. I'm going to allow you to do that type thing with it. It's the same idea. You want us to step aside? You want to take over? You want to do that? Go ahead type thing. It's just same. It's like, what I'm saying is, it's like playing on that same idea of what we were doing before, but now it's like almost a perverted version of it, to where instead of making it so it's like we're supposed to be the container, like you were talking about with the eggshell and that kind of stuff with it. It's just like, all right, well, we'll just pull it apart then, and you can do whatever you want because that's what you want to do. That type deal. I think that it's being manipulated in the wrong way is what's going on there with it. But we're still doing, at least men in general are still wanting to do that same role as before. It's just being twisted.
And it's sometimes harder today than it has ever been in history to fulfill the masculine role.
Yeah, I think one big part of why it's so destructive is because it's like femininity, true femininity is now seen as weak and inferior and like is shunned. And then it's like masculine energy when men are doing it is also icky and, like they're trying to suppress that while stepping into that role themselves. So it's like reject femininity altogether and then like masculine energy when men do it bad, masculine energy when women do it super empowered and brave and all of the things. So it's just completely inverting everything and it's creating such an identity crisis and a purpose, crisis.
Hell, I'd have lots more questions for you about that, but is that the way we were going to go on this podcast? Is that the subject, or do we have some other?
Actually, I had quite a few different subjects, but that definitely opens us all up to get into those. I think it actually segues us perfectly into the strength and beauty side of it. Although I definitely love what you had to say when it comes to that perfect unification, when it comes to the masculine and feminine energies. It doesn't have to be seen as a sort of sexual or gender role. It can definitely be seen more as, I know my body produces testosterone as well as estrogen. Women, biologically produce more estrogen than testosterone, but we both have both of those. So technically within us, within our own DNA, for as far back as DNA can exist, we've always had that. So that perfect unification amongst all of us kind of brings it back to it's not the complete opposites when it comes to that, but together we form a beautiful species or a beautiful entities for what's to come. When it gets into that, it's that strength and beauty. Like I've seen the strength in men different than in women. I don't want to get too, like I said, back on the gender side of stuff, but people constantly see strength as in, okay, you need to be physically in peak athletic condition, when strength truly is at the same time supporting that person next to you and making sure that person has the ability to find the confidence with it, which is a strength in, say, her side as well, to rise to the being that she is meant to be. And I think it's beautiful by both parts to accept the unification thereof and the little bit of each other that is within self.
Yeah, I mean, I see the energies and the human version as they are separate, but they're just parts of the same process. So I always say you have to understand the energies themselves first from a cosmic level, from a just, this is the building blocks of the universe. Everything has this. But then once you have that understanding, then you have to embody that. You bring it down to the human level, into the somatic level, and understand where our own personal strengths and weaknesses are in that kind of way. So that's one thing right there. And then as far as the strength and beauty side of things, that's such a beautiful depiction of, once again, that yin yang correspondence of strength is beautiful and beauty is strong, but in a different kind of way. It's that little speck of the other that it has that quality, but it's not so much that it compromises what it is and its ability to do what it does. I mean, and I like to think of a building, a structure, right? Strength is the house, beauty is the home, and so like, say a man builds a house and it's very, function oriented, right? You got to have good insulation, strong foundation, so it doesn't fall apart, so it doesn't, we don't freeze to death in the winter. Like that's the masculine role, is that functionality, making sure it's sturdy and does what it needs to do. And you still want some aesthetics to it, but you kind of put that second, right? It doesn't matter how beautiful it is if a strong wind's just going to blow it over, right? So you kind of have to keep that priority there. But then once the house is built, then the woman comes in and makes that house a home. She decorates it inside and makes it smell beautiful with flowers and good cooking and, the hearth. The home is where the hearth is. That's the center. Just that's a beautiful way that I love to kind of look at those expressions of, because it's the same thing we're talking about, but then it's letting the masculine and the feminine do what they do and transform it into something better.
How would you go about that if you were, so say from like a spiritual perspective, like you touched on, and just kind of understanding the way the universe works and the masculine and feminine? What are some of the first things you would do? Yeah, we'll say spiritually, because I think a lot of people are looking for that spiritual knowledge and ideas, and I think spirituality can help them realize their masculine and feminine kind of natural ways. What are some ways that you might open people into that way of thinking? Think a whole brainwashed high school full of kids, girls acting like guys, guys acting like girls, eating chips, playing video games all days, girls on steroids, lifting weights. How would you kind of start them on that thought process?
Well, again, great question. Taking it to the individual level. I mean, everyone has their own sweet spot of balance, but it does need to be favoring in one side or the other. As Drif was just saying, we both have, testosterone and estrogen, but in what ratios? Those proportions are very important. It's not 50-50. You'd have some serious problems if you were 50-50, even at the chemical hormonal level. So leaning into those things. So for young men, I would say figure out a direction that you want to go, because you have to put yourself into something, learning a skill, putting yourself in difficult situations like boxing or working construction, or something that's going to build that character and that mental strength and physical strength as well. And that's going to help push you into that. You have to cultivate. I've heard it said, and I kind of more, not like dogmatically, but I think there's some truth to it, is that masculinity is built, femininity is preserved. So a man, he has to work himself up into that power. And especially when there's so many young men that don't have a strong father figure to lead them, to show them how to be a man, they kind of have to either just figure it out, or they're kind of screwed and they're just like blowing around in the wind. So that's a crisis in and of itself that many young men are facing. The feminine is kind of the other way. I think purpose is still important, but it's not so like, I'm going to go build an empire or build a big business, or, it's more like something that is fulfilling. And usually for women, it's something that's a caregiver type of, like, working with animals, working with children, working with plants, right? Something that they can nurture. And, it's still action oriented. So again, you see that crossover, but it's a different flavor. It's not, so I'm going to go out and build my kingdom and conquer the world. That's the masculine kind of mindset. It's a lot more finding your little bubble and your happy space, and just nurturing and cultivating that. Then, you know, staying in your feminine energy enough that is going to attract good, strong, masculine men that will be inspired by that feminine energy to protect and serve her and allow her to continue that. So that's kind of the catch 22 of, like, many women. They're like, well, in today's world, it's just not safe for me to be in my feminine. Therefore, there's no good men around me, and I'm forced into my masculine, and I have kids to feed and all this kind of stuff. And there is validity to that. I'm not trying to diminish that, but it sounds so counterintuitive. But the best thing to do is to do everything you can to lean back into that, whether it's just self care and just carving out a time out of your day to take a bath and just or dance, just something that allows you to flow and let go of everything, even if it's just for a little time, and cultivate that within yourself. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating. You will see miracles when it comes to just how you carry yourself. Your energy will be different, and that will have an effect on the men around you. And all of a sudden, you'll see all these masculine men that are just popping up and like, hey, you need your tire changed, or hey, can I fix anything around your house or whatever? And you'll be like, what's going on here? Where were all these guys before? Well, it's the law of attraction and frequency and vibration. And that works both ways as well. The more masculine a man can cultivate within himself, he's going to attract more of those kind of women. That it's just magnetism, positive and negative. It's literally science, but on a metaphysical, spiritual level.
And my life is proof of that pretty much, because I've always, since I've been young, I've always been more comfortable and safer around men because I'm able to be my freest self. I know I can be in a room surrounded by a bunch of men that I know I can trust, masculine men, and I feel better than I do around a bunch of women. I've been actually backstabbed and hurt more by women than anything else in this world. But it's just always, it's been like that. When I'm my truest, freest self, the right protectors are always there. And I've always had confidence in that. I've never felt alone in this world. Very interesting how you just put that into terms. I'm like, that kind of describes my entire life. Because I've always been a lot more comfortable around men. Always.
Did you realize that consciously? Do you think people make those conscious decisions, or do you guys think that it's kind of something that has to be taught to them, or else they're not going to figure it out?
I truly think that in today's age, it's probably needs to be a little bit more reinforced. I do think that it is definitely something ingrained within us. You know, as Logan stated before, with, say, an absentee parent on either side of it, we lose that look to for support side of it. And then it's so much easier in today's age that, you know, the internet is there, the phone is here, whatever is all there. Everything is designed globally for a consumer environment to just don't go looking for help. Don't go looking for betterment. And if you do, please use this number and call this shrink. Well, the truth is, put the phone down, put these things down, go outside, express yourself, find something that you love. And you might not love it right off the bat. I mean, it could be a masculine woman or a feminine man, whatever the case may be. If you go out there and you experience who and what you are and find out truthfully, you might be like, hey, you know, I'm just kind of dainty for my size, when actually I really like running. Hey, I'm actually built for a runner's build. I don't need to be a power lifter. And in that, you could be the next superstar in that field, like swimmers build, runners build, basketball players. You can be the star of the show by not being what is typically seen as that masculine side of things. Or I know quite a few different women that have pursued, I guess, masculine fields of work and such. I have a cousin who's doing electrician work, and she's doing very well for herself. And it's regardless of, say, who we choose as a partner. That's, I guess, personal preference, and that could be, you know, swayed either way. If anybody has an issue or a better way of explaining that, please, by all means, let us know down below. But what I mean by that is, like, who you are and what you are completely separate. I know that I am a human being and I have both of these things within self. And it's up to me to experience, say, both sides of that and find what best fits me. Not everybody has to be a hunter. You know, everybody can't, you can be a gatherer. If you're best fit to be a basket weaver, I don't care if you're male or female, but your biology says that you're built to do a certain thing. Like I said, I don't want to get into the whole gender politics type stuff. You know, that's to each their own. By all means, be happy with, you know, what you are and who you love. But when it comes to what you physically are, like, you're capable of more. And that goes for both sides of that perfect unity.
Yeah, that human connection is very important. Very, very important, because that's how I learned a lot of myself, is through my reflection with others. And like you were just saying, Drif, like nowadays people are told, you know, just go on the phone, go look it up. Like I'm 38 years old. I grew up without all that, like I didn't have any of that stuff. So it was like easier. I found, like I said, a lot of reflections in the people that I met and where our journeys went together and all that stuff. Is how I discovered a lot about myself, is through community. And that's something, while we're all connected so easily nowadays, that I wouldn't be here talking to all of you. We didn't have this tech. But also, it's disconnecting us more than ever now. People don't have human connection anymore, and that's really important on your path of self-discovery.
Again, I think that gets into that sort of a balance sort of thing. Yes, if I'm always constantly reading these new animes or whatever that's going on, I lose track of the reality that is. I could get lost in this for a bit, which is great to, I guess, decompress from the day's work or whatever it is, or really kind of delve into the ideas of something else. But you have to bring it back to center. You have to bring it back to self. And in truth, we are nature. So why not bring back to and find out not only what we truly are on a psychological level, but on a physical level. Marry the two of those and find out where we can be if we pursue.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to answer your question, Thor, I think it is now more important to have those kind of role models because the youth are so at a disadvantage because they're lacking good role models, especially in the parents, which are the most important. That from, day zero, we're being modeled this masculine and feminine interplay through a mother and father. Ideally, unless they're not there, and then one is forced into the other role, and that's already kind of modeling a bit of confusion there because they're not seeing that clear distinction and the interplay, the dance between them. And then you turn on the TV or you go online or whatever, and there's propaganda, there's indoctrination and brainwashing everywhere. Every sitcom now is so inverted. The women are, bossy and just like judgmental, and the guys just kind of like, oh, whatever you want, baby, and kind of an oaf and messing up all the time, and dad, that kind of thing. It's just ridiculous. It's just repetitive programming. And so, yeah, like if I do believe this knowledge lives within us innately. I do think it's had everything to do with our instincts, but our instincts get so buried by trauma and programming that people are they have no connection to that. They can't hear their instincts screaming at them like this is wrong. This is, this feels bad because they're just their brain is at odds with their body, and they're just like, no, this is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. So yeah, it's not a good situation.
Ironically, if you take the countries, the Scandinavian/Nordic countries as an example for what it is, they're some of the countries that have pushed, the gender equality stuff the furthest and whatnot. You also see the greatest disparity in terms of what they choose and that kind of stuff with it. An example of this is if you look at the field of nursing, when they did that, when they pushed for having more men into nursing and that kind of stuff with it, it actually had the inverted effect over there. And you see this over and over again for that particular structure for what's going on. So the countries that have made it so that way anybody can choose whatever they want are making it so that way they're naturally choosing to do things the exact opposite way of what the programming is, ironically.
The Jordan Peterson interview when he got into an argue on that Scandinavian talk show. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah, it's so true, so true. Yeah. Well, that's a country that people can look to like the whole Scandinavia are countries people can like look to as, yeah, I don't have a lot of great things to say about it, but most of the rest of the world does. Logan, what would you say if you made the YouTube channel? When you make content like ours, we're not going to get rich off of this stuff. We're there to educate and inspire people. I'm assuming that's one of your main goals too. So how do you like to inspire people to find this way? What's your ideal scenario? How that would work? How you're trying to reach people and get them to live the right way spiritually or follow natural law? What is your kind of strategy on that?
So generally not just to do with polarity, but just across the board.
Yeah, natural law, like we were speaking about. Feminine, masculine, natural law, any kind of natural law, whatever. Getting back to the way that the things that you talk about.
Yeah. Well, so I talk about there's a relationship between like learning and healing, first of all. So if you have too much wounding and too much programming, then you can take in right knowledge, but you're going to reject it because you're still in your sickness. It clashes with the false constructs that you've got that you're clinging to because they give you this false sense of wholeness. Right. I go into depth on this on my presentation, Trivium Hacking, about mind control. It's a master blueprint. It's like 3 hours long. So, I mean, it's kind of one of my flagship works. If anyone wants to really dive in deep, like it, that's a good one. But and I talk about this concept on there. And so you have to do enough healing to be able to accept the truth. But at the same time, the truth is part of that sledgehammer that's going to crack open the calcification and the shell and the resistance to what is. So you kind of have to take it in little doses, almost kind of oscillating back and forth. You got to take in some knowledge sit with it and be uncomfortable and let it dissolve and destroy these false structures that you have going on psychologically. And then you have to rebuild with right knowledge, with this new paradigm, this new worldview, right? And then so on and so, because then you have to integrate that. Now that you know it, you can't unknow it, right? Once you see something, you can't unsee it. So you have to just kind of accept it and integrate that. And through the distillation of what is the trivium process, which is kind of the core concept of that talk, where knowledge that becomes integrated, and then you have understanding, and then it turns into wisdom when you're able to act on it. So it's like information, it's like programming the computer, and then you will have care about what you know, so that takes from the mental or the intellectual to the emotional level, and emotions is what creates motion. So when you care enough about something, then you will take action on it through an act of courage and will, which is that belly. So you went mind, heart, belly. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like the true trinity but broken down at the esoteric level. So yeah, that's a big one right there. But then it gets into the question of what is the right knowledge. And there's no one answer except for natural law. Like everyone's going to be drawn towards different things, and that's beautiful. That should be embraced, that we have people that are interested in botany and, architecture and just all these many aspects of human existence. But like I said at the very first of this talk, we have to understand moral law so that we are not overstepping our boundaries and infringing on the rights of other people, because they're just trying to do the same thing. It's like, respect me, I'll respect you. We can all coexist, even if I don't like you, even if I don't agree with everything you're doing. I support your right to do those things as long as they're not harming anyone else. And that's the first thing. A principle literally means first things. So if they're not first, then they aren't your principles. If they change every 5 minutes, or whenever things get difficult or inconvenient for you or aren't serving you, you know, that's not really a principle. And so that has to be first. That's why that is the sort of like fulcrum point of everything I teach on my channel, is understand natural law. And from there, now you're free to do anything in the world that's not causing harm. There's still infinite forms of expression that you can get into. And I say people should go after all of the things. I mean, I'm like that. I'm a musician. I like creating videos and graphic design and bushcrafting. And I mean, there's just cooking, there's so many things, and they enrich my life in some way. So that's kind of the order of operations, is get your moral compass correct so that you know what the seven wrong, there's only seven things you can't do. Now, how many things can you do minus seven? Billions and billions, like infinite, basically, right? That's what actual freedom is. Not just freedom for me, not my freedom, but holistic freedom. That means freedom for all, so that we can cooperate, organize, and create together and share, exchange our gifts and services. And that's the way the world is supposed to work, when we're not operating in all of this programming and mind control and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, getting those operating systems correct. Natural law is first, and then spirituality, which I believe, getting rid of the religion. There's government is the biggest religion, and then you have the spiritual ones. So particularly the Abrahamic ones, I think, are just devastating to spirituality. There's good things woven into it a little bit, but it's far from a net positive when it comes to enriching someone's life. And so getting rid of all of these mind control programs and getting back to the default operating system, which, as I believe, and I said earlier, is the animistic mindset. And then paganism is what I call practical animism. It's like when you have the mindset of animism, that all is spirit, everything is nature, it's all interconnected through a spiritual ecosystem, then paganism is simply the application of that understanding through ritual and magic and just, synchronizing with nature and the cycles of the seasons and venerating the gods and all of these kind of things. Is just how do you actually apply that in your life? So that's why I talk about all of these things, because they're part of one grand tapestry, and you kind of need all of those. There's a lot of people that get natural law, but they're still kind of putting their Christianized or Abrahamic mindset to it, and it distorts it in a lot of ways. And I still say that's better than nothing. Like, it's going in the right direction, but you can't just pitch your tent at the foot of the mountain and say that you're done. You've got to go all the way, and you got to pull out all of these bullshit religions and systems from their roots and get back to naturalistic all the way around.
That removes the need to teach people ethics, right? If people, you might know this, Nathaniel, but if you believe everything has a spirit, everything has a consciousness, you'll treat everything with respect, right? But then there's also some spiritual practices in the Vedic tradition, I think, that you're specifically trying to see everything around you and feel it as an actual extension of yourself. There's a word for it. It's part of the Vedic or Hindu thing. I forget what it is now, but you don't have to teach ethics if you can teach people how to feel like everything is an extension of their self.
It's conscience. Yes. It's written on the human heart.
It's the notion of like Brahman being the oversoul, and then that we each have a part of ourselves with Atman and that kind of stuff. And we're all just individualistic aspects of it, which is kind of what this is behind me here. In terms of the sacred geometry and that kind of stuff. You have a void, put a circle around it that gives you the first thing, and you keep doing it over and over and over again. You get all the individuated aspects of things with it, but ultimately remove those imaginary lines that are there with it. It's all the same notion for things with it. And what you're talking about there is absolutely the whole point of like spiritual illumination in the Vedic tradition and the Hindu tradition, and then that kind of stuff with it. Thor, it's 100%. The whole point of things is to make it so that way you don't have to teach anything. It's just innate. It's a direct experience, sort of. It's what I was talking about kind of on one of our first episodes that we were doing with stuff with it, It's like this description of, most people are going for the description of like a hamburger or a hot dog or a sandwich or whatever the deal is, rather than eating the damn thing. Knowing what it actually is through that. The description means nothing. It's an empty platitude.
Yeah, even all the practices with the Pacos and stuff, it's all your interaction with the spirits. Like, your consciousness is a gift. You're choosing to acknowledge and see, okay, this is a spirit. Everything is a spirit, and I'm connected to it. If I harm it, it's going to harm me, so on and so forth. It's that conscious effort to actually acknowledge it as a part of you and a part of everything, and take that moment to actually appreciate it and see how it interacts with the rest of the universe, bigger than just us, how it causes an effect that starts from one, from a ripple effect. So it affects the earth as a whole, starts from one person to another person, to another person, another person, so on and so forth. They refer to everything as people. They'll say plant people, spirit, stone people, all that kind of stuff. They don't say people as just humans, because it is a one entirety species. So I forget what the exact word, they do have a word for that, but it's very similar in that aspect. I'm seeing all these different correlations, and it's really cool. It's really cool because we're all trying to get to this one point here. Just need more people to understand.
More along the lines looked at as, say, an entity. How someone, say, could form a business, and this is a separate entity than oneself. It separates that, say, liabilities and whatnot, but at the same time, it is now a living, breathing organism. Once it gets up and running on its own, it can actually perform functions without one present. When, say, the Paco look to, say, the rocks as the rock people, I understand different languages sometimes have a single word for many things. So by saying entity, it just, in the English language, we got 16 words for one thing. Well, many other places are like, that's boy. Like, that's just boy. Like, any age, it's not man, it's not child, it's not brother, that's boy. So, yeah, no, that's amazing. I like that it kind of brings the whole thing back to, say, the polarity, the magnetism, the helping each other in all that stuff, whether it's the Brahmin or the Paco or all these different types of things. I actually have a question. Do we want to continue on? Like, we can continue on, or if anybody wants to close out, we could possibly talk about a second run at this. Everybody okay with continue on?
I got like 10, 15 more.
All right. Well, with that, 10, 15 minutes, that doesn't give us too much time, but I would definitely like to find out for our viewers as well as self, if anybody's interested in how they can learn more, say, about you, about your channel, or anything that you do have going on at this current time. Do you mind giving us a little, I guess, hint into where we can find more of your content?
Of course. Yeah, I would love to. So obviously, in the context of this conversation, the Wizard Factory is probably your flavor, just general spirituality, empowerment, kind of, mindset, sovereignty is a big one. And so there will be a link below that has my link tree. So there's everything. If you want little daily bits, go and follow on, Instagram or Facebook or something like that. If you want to deep dive, which, I recommend, that you get more into the substance of it. Long form is more on my YouTube channel. That is kind of my main focus as far as content and output. And I'm playing around with some other fun projects. I started putting out some voice impression content, just kind of comedy and fun, right? That's important as well. I do music, as I said. So that's kind of another thing called Logan Makes Noise, where I'd make noises, whether it's with my mouth or an instrument or whatever. And hopefully, tickles your fancy a little bit there. And of course, my biggest project of late is just last month I released a rune course called Rune Shamanism, which is part one of a 3-part course that I'm going to eventually make. It's a huge amount of work, but so worth it. I'm extremely proud of what I've put together with that. And, for anyone feeling called to the runes, I invite you to check out the free mini course that will teach you the first 3 runes and how to invoke the power of those particular energies using the practice of Galder. And, if you like that, then by all means go forward and get the whole course. But, the runes, for anyone not familiar, can be extremely transformative to you as a person, working with them as cosmic archetypes of these different aspects of our own psychology and the universe through the law of correspondence, as above, so below. These things are present in everything, including ourselves. So it's not only about transformation and internal alchemy, but external as well. So using them to help bring about certain outcomes. If you are someone who already practices magic, you can use those absolutely. In fact, part 3 of the course that's not out yet will be all about runic magic. But just having these as a tool in your toolkit is extremely invaluable to any spiritual student. So do check out that free mini course and just get a little flavor.
Perfect.
On that, which runes are you using? Are you using the Elder, the Younger Futhark? Are you doing
Elder.
Saxon?
Yeah. The only one that's that is pre-Christian and untainted by that influence. Not to say that there can't be some value in the newer ones, but to me, the Elder is by far the best.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, you heard the man. It is free to have that little introduction course. I strongly suggest going over, at least checking out his channel, seeing what works for you. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say, Logan, it's truly been a pleasure having you on. I think we should probably definitely do this again sometime.
I'd be more than happy to. This was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time. We can continue on, but that I figure is a good way to stop. If anybody wants to bullshit between each other, by all means, go ahead. I truthfully just have to take a piss.
I'm definitely gonna have to check out your course, Logan, because I've really deeply gone into the runes and stuff like that, but I've never really encountered too many that incorporate Galder into it. You can't find a lot of information on that. So I'm diving in. I'm definitely diving in.
Perfect. Yeah. And for me, what I set out to do is to solve the problem that I ran into when I was trying to learn about runes, which was either just an overly simplistic, what I call crackerjack box version of this wisdom that's just kind of like super superficial and surface level, shallow type teaching, or just outright conflicting information. The person says this, one person says that, they both can't be true or whatever. So I really just took a lot of time distilling them down and just really contemplating each rune and distilling them down to what is this really, cut away all the excess and just get down to the essence of it, what it truly is. And then you can kind of reverse engineer the many ways that this one energy can kind of be expressed.
Yeah.
Say, instead of saying, oh, it's just a protection rune. So say Alkis, for example, that's one of these so-called protection runes, but it's not just a protection rune. It's a sanctuary. It's a safe space created when you're in your power, and it creates like a force field around you. So yes, protection is a byproduct of it, but it doesn't describe that energy by just saying protection. It's not getting to the essence of it. So that's just one example.
Yeah.
And then of course,
I made these is what I did. Like I took 3x5 cards, and I just took what some basic stuff was that you were talking about, in the beginning with it. And I just wrote some stuff down. Then I carried around with me in my pocket, and I'd add things to it with insights that I got or experiences that I had with it. And what I did is I did this 9 days, because 9's a very important number, over and over again inside of the Nordic tradition,
especially with the runes.
Single one of them. That's what I did with every single one of them. And so, I still have the originals that I made like 2 years ago or whatever it is now.
That's really cool. That's actually something I talk about in the course as well, as a way to build a personal relationship with the runes, is just write them down, carry it around in your pocket, and you have that on you, and you're going to feel it, in some kind of way.
I also I don't have it with me, but I have one of these like type of notebooks here that I would do with it, that I would write down anything that came to me that was like, a synchronicity or a correspondence or whatever that was like that was going on with it. So yeah, I'd probably be interested in checking out your rune course at some point too.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on my thing. But yeah, it really is the best way of learning the runes. It's what I always recommend to people, because it's like, hey, you can find all these descriptions all over the internet, that's a dangerous, dangerous place. I just recommend people taking one rune. I don't care how you have it. If you go buy a fancy set, you make it yourself. I mean, I think it's better you make it yourself. You're putting the energy into it and you're connecting to it. But you just look at the world around you while you have the rune with you. See what happens. See how you connect. And a lot of people end up kind of aligning in the same way. It's pretty amazing to see.
And when you go into the chanting, you will really feel it.
Yeah.
For sure.
That actually reminds me of something. I know that Thor just put something out on his Patreon side of stuff when it comes into breathwork and meditation. I know that you're pretty familiar in that sort of a thing as well. I don't know if Thor, did you see much of his content when it comes to that sort of deal?
No, I don't think I've seen those.
Logan, if you don't mind,
The breathwork meditation stuff. Yeah,
BS in between each other, like it's some pretty awesome stuff on both of you guys', being a fan of both of your channel, and then seeing both of you guys coming to similar things at different points and whatnot, I think is just a really good idea. And that was one of the topics I kind of wanted to get onto, but given the hour of actual good footage, made more sense to just put you guys in contact with each other from there.
Absolutely.
Another episode.
That's
we
true.
should just do that. Another episode.
Yeah.
The stuff I literally grew up with, and my Hindu/Vedic household with my mom's side of stuff with it.
Well, I believe Ryan's going to let it keep rolling. Unfortunately, I got to go back to being a dad. I got to take care of the kids and such. So I'm going to let you guys all kind of continue on and do as you wish from there. Logan, I mean it. It was great having you on, and hopefully we can definitely do this again sometime.
Yeah, I was going to do that.
All right.
Absolutely.
See you all in the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I think you would have really appreciate what I was about to say about the breath.
Go for it.
Because there's even the polarity aspect to the breath as well, because you can use breath to stoke the fire or to calm the waters. Like there is that sort of parasympathetic and sympathetic functionality to it, depending on how you do it. Even the in and out is a polarity. So when you're breathing in, that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. Exhaling is the parasympathetic. And depending on which breath you put the emphasis on, the inhale or the exhale, it will create kind of movement in that direction. So if you want to calm down, you kind of short inhale and then a long controlled exhale.
Exactly what I said.
Calming.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely like that.
And so the Wim Hof, for example, that's a very stoke the fire. Sometimes it's a bit much for me. Actually, I kind of get a lot of anxiety if I do that too much or too hard. because you're basically hyperventilating yourself. So yeah, there's so many different ways to play with the breath. It's amazing. It's such a cool tool that you just have instant access to no matter where you are for free. It's
I
incredible.
think
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's so cool in the fact that you can use breath. Like that's how I'm helping people to go through like into trance states. You have to go through what they call like a little death, where essentially you're hyperventilating, and it's like, yeah, you're inhaling, like, you know, you're getting a lot of carbon dioxide in your body and all that stuff. That also causes all that, but it helps you easily kind of let go and allow you to get more into a deeper trance. And yeah, it always starts with that. They call it a little death. You have to hyperventilate until you're like really close, and then
Or even
your mind's
the opposite side of that, where it's extra oxygen to the brain that really opens up certain other ways, which is why obviously,
yes,
a
that's it.
plane crash or something along the lines of they drop
So
oxygen.
they have
Right.
yeah.
They drop oxygen,
Yeah.
so it helps you kind of become more of a euphoric state. But at the same time, the only time that I truthfully used, say, breath work is in the service. It's, cold as balls, and everybody has to stand still for 3 hours and wait for someone else to come here and talk for another hour. And you just stand there shivering in the cold for hours. So that, you could do it at any time, especially if you're stationary, just breathing in slowly and then sort of, focusing internally. I forget exactly where I learned it. It was one of the East Asian sort of arts, and it was stoking that fire, as one would say, down in the belly, and imagining that fire growing larger and larger until everyone else is there just literally shivering. You find a sense of calm, you find a sense of peace, and you're, next thing you know, you're actually warm and completely comfortable in a place where it is otherwise hard to be such.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's Wim Hof. If anyone's familiar, that dude will literally just submerge himself in ice up to here, and he's just cool as a cucumber. Yeah, just through the breath.
So they do this in the Vedic tradition. They do stuff with the touching of the nose and opening up and closing various different nostrils at different times with it. And then they also do stuff with the tongue for some of the breathing too,
Yeah.
like making a particular funnel with it or like that or whatever. They have various different things that are supposed to be doing different polarities, different things with it, get you different states and whatnot too. I just thought I'd throw the very bare bone basic stuff out there for what it is on that front too.
It's the spiritual hardware.
Yeah, I wish we had
Manipulate.
more of that in Europe. And that's just we don't, like, almost none of the sources we have go over that. And so it's too bad. I wish we had more of it from the old traditions, but we just don't.
Right. Well, I think that might just be a good topic for us on this next one to bring it all back, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely, as I'm always down to get into just the more, the natural law, the sovereignty, that kind of stuff. Because, like I said, it really has to be number one in my view. It's
First principle.
open-minded as certain people can be. That's one area where it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We've got to have this, centralized power of violent executive power. Otherwise, there would be chaos. And it's like, you just described chaos. You know that, right?
We need
like
chaos in order to keep from it.
Oh, the criminals would take over. You mean like the criminals in the government?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I'm going to take off. It's going to continue recording until everybody's done and Ryan cuts it off. So enjoy each other's time and company, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Logan, when you go off, just make sure it says that your upload is done, because this does upload each individual person's stream to Riverside. So just make sure it says that your upload is 100% before you get out of it completely. Trying to be
Right now,
right
the
here.
corner should say your percentage. Right now, mine says 99% uploaded or
That's
whatever.
what mine says as well. So
Okay.
say like
your internet,
like
your internet's fine. Then you don't have to worry.
When you close it out, don't close the tab until it says that it's completed. Then you can close it.
so you're saying click the leave button first, and then wait till it says 100. And
Be
then
like 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
And it should be 5 or 10 seconds since you're already at 99% for yours. Yeah.
yeah, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure, man. I'm driving through the Appalachians, and I was watching my bars get. I'm like, man, it's kind of remote out here, but I wasn't gonna make it all the way to Charlotte tonight because it would have cut into the scheduled recording time. So I was on the lookout for a good spot. I saw this little truck stop, and I had full 4G. It wasn't 5G, but it was full bars of 4G, and I was like, there it is.
You got it.
But you got like a van studio there that you can road trip and work from.
I'm in my semi. Yeah, I'm a truck driver, man.
Awesome. Yeah, even better.
Yeah, I have friends that do that. They travel all over the U.S. and they go in between a semi and an RV because I have to be incognito for things. And yeah, the same thing. Like she finds a spot for the internet. That's it. They've been all over the U.S. for over 17 years. So
Oh, yeah.
it's a
I'm
fun lifestyle.
jealous of those guys that work one day. That's a fun job. You get to
I
drag
know.
around,
I'm
see the
still
country,
ending it.
and you can still like it's not maybe not healthy, but you could work out if you want. Like you can get a body weight workout in a park or something and eat healthy at places.
I work out right here in the truck, man.
Yeah.
I've got a folding bench under the table, and I've got adjustable dumbbells under this seat here. So I set up a bench between the seats, and I do bench press and everything. Like
That's all you need. That's all you need. And then
Yeah.
that's the workout, good food. That's all. That's a good life.
I have to. Yeah, I got to.
You can do a bunch of calisthenic stuff too pretty easily, I'm sure there.
Yeah, got to be outside for that.
Yeah, but I mean,
sometimes
your body can go anywhere,
you-
so that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying as far as just comfort, I guess. I mean, I work out of Texas. Working out
Work on your inner Wim Hof, man. That's all you got to do.
working out in 100-degree weather is pretty intense, and
Yeah.
showers
I
are
was
always
used to
allowed.
that all
We
the
have
time.
often too.
Used to that all the time when I lived in a desert in California. Yep. Where I'm from. I'm from California originally. Now I live in New Hampshire. So.
Wow, pretty big difference in climate there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't go up that north really ever. I was up in New York a couple days ago. I actually went all the way to Canada, but yeah, other than that, I'm mostly kind of in the triangle between Charlotte, North Carolina, Columbus area, or Ohio,
Yeah.
and Houston, Texas, which is I'm actually in Dallas where I live, but I do a lot of back and forth between Houston and Cincinnati. We do a lot of freight there. Yeah, I drive Tinker, so chemicals, latex, oil, additives, stuff like that.
I must go because I also have to parent and all that
Pro-
fun stuff.
The
So,
Costco.
yes,
I
I
can
know.
log off.
Are you availability on Monday or Tuesday for our
Yes.
meeting? Since I screwed it up this earlier this week.
It's no, you had a pretty damn good excuse for messing it up. Don't worry about it. Yeah, either day. Either day. I have Monday and Tuesday. We can try Monday, and then if one of us screws it up, then we can do Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Well, it was great meeting you.
Same.
Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Let's see it. All right, thank you.
We keep talking about there.
To head out, and yeah, we'll do it again soon, and we'll let you know when that episode will be up.
But yeah, I'm stoked for it, man. Are you guys on Facebook or anything?
I'm not. I haven't been on Facebook since 2014, when I learned about what was going on with it in terms of the prison program and Edward Snowden and all that other crap.
I do for business. I never go on to speak to anybody anymore. Yeah, you can maybe find me. Thought the dollar exactly like my name there. You'd find me that, but I don't say. I go on the. I post from my business account. I don't really ever use my personal one.
Okay. Well, just what's a good way to be in contact if you just want to stay in touch and maybe collaborate on something.
Do you have Instagram?
I do.
Yeah. Instagram is best then.
Great.
That's
You
the
can
same one because I'll go on that pretty regularly.
Yeah, if you just follow me at The Wizard Factory, I'll follow you back, and then we'll message there.
That sounds good.
I mean, I'm kind of archaic in the way I don't even have a smartphone or a phone at all right now.
That's hardcore.
Everything I do goes to the computer. I mean, I have a voice over internet protocol that I use on the computer to contact people that way, but I can't do like text messaging or anything like that. So I use like Telegram or Discord or whatever. So
Yeah, very cool. Well, if you want to shoot me an email, or I'm on Telegram as well.
yeah.
I'm just Logan at The
I
Wizard
was actually
Factory.
surprised that you learned it through somebody else in terms of the natural law. I know who Mark Passio is. I'm familiar with his work. First I heard about it was actually when I was in school learning about the Declaration of Independence and the Founding Fathers.
Fair. I did hear of that through, what is it? John Locke was one of the big influencers of that. Yeah, but it's similar.
See, they didn't
a little bit
went
different.
through what it was. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the concept of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. Yeah, I guess to be fair, that's probably where I first heard of it. But like you said, they didn't They didn't say nearly enough about it for me to put a note in my mind, and they did not go into it. They did absolutely. You don't need to read all that. They were a bunch of racist slave owners, anyways. All those founding fathers. Don't look into any of their works or anything. God forbid.
Yeah. Now they're now being taught that they are white supremacist neo Nazis is what they're basically being taught.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later. I added you on a
All
right.